This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Viterbi Voices. I am, as usual, one of your co-hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma, Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And hello, everyone. I'm your other co-host, Maya Neuenschwander. I am a junior this year studying Industrial and Systems Engineering at the University of Southern California. And yeah,
this is it. We are in it. We're in season 8. Maybe you heard the trailer last week, but we're bringing our first episode to you today. This is an episode that I am super excited to help kind of bring to the table. It is one of our alumni. His name is Guillermo Garcia. I should say Dr. Guillermo Garcia, or we know him all as Memo. So Dr. Garcia, or Memo, is a fantastic guy. You just met him. I mean, like, your initial impression?
Yeah, a fantastic human. I think he really drew attention with everything that he was saying. It was really positive. He was super fun to listen to, had a lot of really cool stories, loves football. I absolutely loved the chance to interview him and just talk.
Yeah. So what we're about to hear is, and we're not going to spend too much time here, but we'll talk to you on the other side of this, is that Dr. Garcia came from Texas, came from El Paso, Texas, and he transferred to USC in his sophomore year. He's got his degree in mechanical engineering, went on to get master's and PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of California at Berkeley, and has done a lot in the energy and nanotechnology space. I don't want to ruin it. Let's just get out of the way and have you meet Dr. Guillermo Garcia, or Memo.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Memo, what's up, man?
Haven't seen you in a while. How you been?
Been a long while, man. Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a crazy last couple of years.
I bet. This is Maya. If you never met her.
No, hi, Maya. Nice to meet you.
Hello, Memo. Nice to virtually meet you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here, buddy. I really appreciate it. Thanks for playing along with us. It's so good to actually see you and connect with you. It's been a long time. I can't remember the last time. I feel like the last time I saw you was maybe at like a Bay Area event that we had up there.
It was. I was thinking about it. It has to have been probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, it had to be I think when you were in the middle of your PhD or something like that, or just started your PhD, something like that.
It was, I think I had just finished my PhD.
That's what it was.
I was starting my business, my first venture. And I think that's the last time we met. We saw each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome, man. It's so good to see you. I'm so excited to get you connected on this stuff. And especially for Maya to get to hear you, and for all of our listeners, we have about 5 listeners. So all 5 of them to be able to hear all the things that you've done. I just, if you're okay, I'd like to just jump right in. But why don't, I think one of the coolest things about you, Memo, is you've got such a cool background. You've got so many things that you've done. I mean, you came to USC, you went to Berkeley, got your master's. I mean, you studied mechanical engineering for all those things. You got your PhD in mechanical engineering. You have a whole resume full of companies that you just started talking about, like things that you've started, all related, I think mostly to energy, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
But I want to start even before all that, which is
sure.
Tell us about because a lot of our listeners are high school students and parents of high school students. So can you remember your high school self?
Oh yeah. I mean, I could even take it a little further back before high school. Yeah. Let's go. So I grew up in a household that was all about science. Both my parents are MDs. They met in medical school. And when I was growing up, science was a big thing in our house. And thinking about science and education was something that my parents really, I guess, had a big role in both my sister and my lives, both my sisters in the health field as well. And I became kind of the black sheep where I decided to stay away from health and go into engineering because What a
failure. What an absolute failure.
Yeah, no. I was like the black sheep of the family. They're like, well, you don't want to go into health. I really liked engineering and innovation. And so I, before I got into high school, my dad, his hobby was actually working on cars. And part of why I entered into college for mechanical engineering is because my dad would take me in on the weekends and we would work on cars together. And so I had the opportunity to actually start working when I was 13. I was actually a paper boy. I know that sounds a little weird, but I was around the days when they still had an evening paper and a
I
morning
think you have to
paper.
explain to people what a newspaper is, and then
Yeah,
explain the concept of actually delivering said newspaper to people in the mornings. It's like still dark in the morning, right?
Yes,
well,
as a young person, I can say I had no idea. No idea.
yeah, actually, during the week, it was the Herald Post. It was in the evenings, so I would pick it up after school at 3 o'clock, and I would deliver the paper by 7 o'clock in the afternoon. So they would have a morning newspaper and an evening newspaper. So Monday through Friday, I would do the evening newspaper, and then Saturday and Sunday, God bless my parents, they would wake up at 4 in the morning. They would go pick up the newspaper from a central location, wake me up when they would come home, and then we would roll it in our living room, and they would drive me because they thought it was too dangerous to go out that early in the morning to throw the papers by yourself.
Yeah.
So we would go throwing all the papers out there. But anyways, I'm bringing this up because I was able to start thinking about finances and how you can integrate finances with engineering. And so my dad said, look, you were able to make some savings from your first job as a newspaper. Let me teach you how you could get those finances and try to build a small business around it. So at 15, my dad said, look, if you find a vehicle that you want to purchase that we could fix together, we'll try to put it on the market and sell it afterwards. And so I started my first venture when I was 15 in buying and flipping cars. And in high school, I bought probably 6 or 7 cars and flipped them.
No way.
Mostly exotic vehicles. I had my first car was a Mitsubishi Eclipse. It was a turbocharged unit. And then I had 68 Nova, a super sport.
Yeah.
I had 68 Camaro. Anyways, I had a variety of different vehicles in high school. And I just like that bridging of business, but also the hands-on engineering work. So I would work on all the cars myself. My dad and I would fix both the exterior in terms of painting. Like I would hand sand and paint the whole car myself, as well as the actual mechanics of how an engine worked and understanding internal combustion engines and the science behind a vehicle.
And you never wanted to keep any of these? This was always for purpose of like, you're just flipping and going after profit margins.
I did. I still have I have a 94 twin turbo Supra. It still only has 100,000 miles on it. This is for people that like vehicles, this is one of the most wanted vehicles out in the market. And
really?
Yeah, it's still actually in my parents' home. I never brought it with me to California when I migrated from Texas, just because we don't have a garage. I haven't had I have a garage now, but we have it at the gym. But yeah, it's a collector car. Maybe I'll hand it down to my kids when they have it. But yeah, I did. I kept the 68 Camaro and the Supra before I went to USC. And I actually sold my Camaro to pay for the study abroad program that USC offered. So I was able to do an Italy summer abroad, and I didn't want to take out loans. So I ended up selling the Camaro. And with that funding, I paid for, the balance of the tuition and the housing, et cetera. But it was well worth it, in my opinion. When are you going to be able to travel abroad when you're 20 years old in Italy and enjoy that time frame?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, if I remember correctly, you're from San Antonio. Is that correct?
No, I'm from El Paso, Texas.
El Paso. So sorry. Obviously, I don't remember correctly. This is how many things I don't remember.
No worries. Yeah. So El Paso is the most western city in Texas. Yeah. And it's a unique city because it's about 85% Hispanic. And most of the families that are there are second or third generation. But there's a close tie to the Mexican city. So my parents actually did all their schooling in the Mexican city, and they would cross the bridge every day. So they had a doctor's office in Mexico. So it's just gives you an idea of how that valley is incorporated. So it's an interesting place to grow up because it's very Hispanic culture, kind of family oriented sort of location, but it's very sheltered. So when I moved to USC, it was like a completely different world to me. I was experiencing a variety of different cultures and viewpoints and lifestyles, and it was something that I really earned to try to experience, but had no clue on how I would be able to, fit in, I guess, if you look at it from that standpoint. But anyway, so with this business and through the engineering, that's what motivated me to get into engineering when I was in college. But throughout high school, I always took a variety of different science classes. Chemistry and physics were my favorite. I actually did a competition called the Chemical Olympics, the Southwest Chemical Olympics. It was 3 different type of chemistry tests where you would do a variety of different experiments, and I got a gold medal on titration, where you mix an acid and a base, and you try to figure out what the right concentration of the acid and the base is. And so I was always kind of interested in chemistry, but my hands-on experience was in mechanical engineering. So I chose mechanical engineering as my main focus. But when I got into USC, and I was able to actually, I have an interesting story, because I didn't go to USC straight out of high school. I ended up spending my first year at the University of Texas at El Paso.
UTEP.
And at UTEP. And part of that was primarily I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. And secondly, my parents never did schooling in the US. And so I didn't really have good guidance in terms of how to get scholarships. I always had the impression at that age that they would just reach out to you and, give you
you've been chosen.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't apply very much outside of UTEP. And so they had given me a full ride scholarship, and I was like, okay, I'll stay here and I'll do it. But I earned to leave and try to, create new experiences. So I started looking at different locations that I wanted to potentially go to. And a good friend of mine from high school did go to USC off the bat. And she was like, you should look into USC. And when I looked into it, I got really enamored with the fact that it was Los Angeles, and I had a really good reputation from an engineering standpoint. So I put all my eggs in that basket. I think the recruitment officer there probably got tired of the amount of times that I would call and try to talk to her to make sure she had all my paperwork so that I could guarantee that I would be able to transfer. But I did transfer in my sophomore year. So I only spent 3 years at USC, but it was interesting in the fact that coming in as a transfer student, you miss out on building the initial bonds that a lot of students get during their freshman year in the dorms. I never actually lived in the dorm. I ended up renting an apartment outside of the campus about 2 miles north in the Koreatown area. And so it took a while to build a friendship.
That's hard. That's hard to build out that community when you're that far away.
Yeah. I was fortunate that I had a friend from high school, and from there it built out, and then eventually through classmates and all the other extracurricular activities that I was doing at the campus, you were able to build good bonds with folks. But in that time period while I was at USC, to try to meet people, I started doing a lot of, I was a Viterbi student ambassador, and I started doing other kind of activities that are involved. And I ended up doing undergraduate research in the energy space. And that's when I started realizing that I really was enamored more with chemistry and energy than mechanical engineering. But I was already in my junior year, and I just decided, well, I could continue to finish my degree in mechanical engineering, but focus my efforts in terms of science and research in more of chemistry, energy, electrochemistry kind of techniques. And so that's eventually what I ended up doing for the rest of my remaining time at USC. But yeah, it was, I loved my time at USC. I joke, because when I went to graduate school, the only thing that I owned from UC Berkeley is my diploma. I never bought a shirt. I never bought anything. I always repped USC. I went to all the football games when they played USC and repped all my USC stuff. And all of my roommates at the time and my friends from Cal, they would make fun of me. But it's just when you spent
more time at Cal than you did at USC with your master and your PhD.
Correct. I was there for 5 years, but even then, I had an allegiance to USC. It's a unique university where you have the opportunity to experience doing research with smaller classes. Now when I went to Berkeley, I had a reference point on how another university would look at it. And I also went to UTEP, right? And so when comparing all three experiences, I noticed the benefits that you get from having smaller classes and having the facilities that USC had. And it actually does enable you to be able to, I guess, excel a little bit faster. One of the challenges that I saw at Berkeley was that the class sizes were huge. And when I was teaching the classes, it was kind of, it wasn't an ideal situation. And a lot of the feedback that I would get from the students was that, the professors there were a little too research oriented and not so much focused on trying to get them to the right level. And I saw it firsthand. So it's good to be able to compare the two and see how it was. So it again motivated me to continue to, excel in the USC and tell people that they should always consider going to USC.
I'm there's so many topics you brought up that I want to dive into, and I'm trying to figure out where I want to start. But let's talk about being a transfer student in general, because there's no way to speak on behalf of transfer students other than to say that there's no one type of transfer student. They're coming from such myriad backgrounds, different types of schools and universities, different types of family situations at home, different ages, different challenges that they're involved in, which is the exciting part about our transfer student population. Some are like you, spending 1 year at an institution, then transferring over. Some could be, veterans that went to the service and then came back, and they're 28 and coming back to college. And I think you hit on something that I wanted to dive into a little bit more, which is, as a transfer student, there are challenges. No matter what we do, there are challenges on feeling like you're part of the community because you feel like you're always a couple steps behind. But you talked about how you sought out those experiences. Can you dive into that a little bit more? And in speaking to transfer students that maybe just got there this week, and other transfer students that are about to join next, like what do you want to tell them?
Yeah, I think for me, what helped me in my journey when I moved, there's two facets that I think impacted me the first 6 months that I was at USC. One was, first time outside of living in the same region area, being within 5 minutes of everything that I grew up with. And so, getting used to living a faster speed of life, especially in Los Angeles. I think that I was enthusiastic about it, but at the same time, it was new, right? So just getting acclimated and adjusted to it. But in terms of the university aspect, it's hard to jump into bonds that people picked. A lot of times it seems that most individuals build their friendships through their dorms. And since they're living together, they're able to really reflect each other, and they continue those bonds throughout the whole college experience. And so what I ended up doing is I had part of my financial aid package was to do work study. And so I met people through the work study. And then I started just going to the activities that were around for the different organizations like Pi Tau Sigma or VSC. And I just started introducing myself. I'm not that shy. And so to me, it wasn't that big of an issue to go up and just say, hey, my name is Memo and I'm new here and blah, blah, blah. And through there, you could start to see, eventually build friendships. And through those friendships, you start to meet their friends that they had accumulated from their freshman year, right? And I think once you're able to get a feel for the friendships that you're building, you eventually, it just becomes normal. And, I think after the first 6 months, after the first semester, I already kind of had a core group that I started to interact with. And I kept that core group all the way throughout the rest of my time at USC. But I just think putting yourself out there a little bit and being able to just introduce yourself and understand that it's okay if, like, some people that I tried to build friendships with, they didn't seem as interested because they already have their core groups, and it has nothing to do with you. It's fine. You can find and meet someone else. And so that transition, I think, was probably the most challenging, I would say, for the USC experience from the beginning. But I think that's typical for anybody who's going to a new college for a first time and leaving home. Anyhow, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, Memo, to hear you talk about that because I feel like I had almost a similar experience. Like you could say I transferred from Zoom University. Like I started my first year completely online.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of the things you were talking about struggling with, like meeting people and everybody's on campus, but you feel like you never had that freshman dorm experience. You were never in an environment where everybody was just solely there to meet people.
Yeah.
I found a lot of the stuff you were talking about really resonated with my experience as well. And Dooley, I think all the advice that you gave, just like getting out, involving yourself, that's really what I tried to do when I was virtual and coming in. And yeah, I agree. That was very effective.
It's definitely a different day and age. I was thinking about, the whole COVID era of 2020 to 2022, and just thinking, wow, every student that's starting college right now is not going to be able to experience that. And I felt they were kind of robbed a little bit of that experience. I didn't have that opportunity just because my freshman year, UTEP is more of a commute school. Most people that go to UTEP live at home or are from El Paso. And so it was slightly a different culture or environment there. And I just felt that all the people coming in 2020 and 2021, they were not going to be able to experience that. So I have empathy for you, but I'm assuming now you guys are back in classes, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And I joke, I say like, I never knew what I missed until I see the freshmen now. And I'm like, oh, like that's what it's supposed to look like. That's what this normal experience would be.
I don't want to call it funny, but it's super interesting. I recognize, I might have already talked about this on the podcast, and I apologize if I have, but for both of you, it's super fascinating that over the last, I think it was 6 months or 9 months ago, I can't remember, we were in an online Zoom information session student panel. And all of the students that were on the panel were asking questions, answering, and they're doing great, like normal, like Memo, like you used to do. Like it was the same idea of like, what's it like? What's this? But there's a question that stumped the entire panel, and it was, what's your favorite tradition? And they all kind of like looked at each other, and I realized they haven't been there for 2 years. Like the tradition, what are you talking about? It's like, well, the tradition of like logging off of Zoom. Like,
like for me, it was always at the beginning of the football game when you walk down the corridor and you kick the flagpole before you get to the Coliseum. That was always fun because everybody would just get so riled up. And on football Saturdays, man, there's something you look forward to, right? I had the fortune to be there during the Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart years. So it was always a matter of, are we going to win by 40 or are we going to win by 50? And so I was a little bit of I guess I was lucky to be able to experience that era of USC athletics. But from a tradition standpoint, that was always my favorite memory from the USC.
Were you there when we started losing after that?
No.
Okay, so you went out on the top. You went out.
I went out on the
national
top.
Championship, Orange Bowl type situation. Okay.
Correct. I left in. I graduated in 2007. And so I think it was David Booty was the last year when I was there.
Booty. I think about that as well, but I went to school in the worst era of USC college football. It's like we maybe showed up at halftime. We definitely left by the third quarter. It was a whole other situation. And like the pinnacle was my senior year was the first year we beat UCLA in almost a decade at that point. And so that was crazy and super fun. But then, I see this, the Pete Carroll, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart era, and everybody goes. And then the other side of that is when we started not doing well. And I remember being in the stands when we lost, and I was like, oh, that's a bummer. And then you look over and all the students, and they're crying. They're just bawling hysterically. And they realize they've never lost. They have no idea what this is like. And I was like, well, welcome. This happens. It's an amazing back and forth rubber band of it.
Yeah. It's really weird because I had this like affinity for Pete Carroll. So when he went to Seattle, I was like,
you became a Seahawks fan?
I can't tell my family that because I was born and raised a Cowboys fan since I'm from Texas, and they would disown me. But yes, secretly I've always kind of followed Seattle. I wanted them to do well. Just because I have, these strong memories of Pete and what he did for USC. This era coming up is going to be amazing. I think it's going to be back in an upswing. There's been a lot of good moves, in my opinion. I think the whole move to go to the Big Ten is a little odd, but whatever. I think this is where college sports are going, and so it is what it is.
It's just it's at the end of the day, we're gonna have better games. Maya, are you because Emily last year couldn't care less about football. Do you have any interest on football at all? Are you excited for the season?
I am excited for the season. And actually, Memo, I am from a Big Ten area. I'm originally from Wisconsin. So I could not be happier about the Big Ten move. It's like all my brother and my dad could talk about.
That's hilarious.
It's just, yeah, my brother's like, okay, coming back for a master's, like USC is joining the Big Ten. I have to watch these now. So
that's great. That's amazing.
Yeah, I follow football, probably not to the extent of you, Memo, or I will never cry at a game. I will never feel that emotion tied to football,
I never cried, but I would pace a lot, especially in the years when there was like so close at the end of so I remember it was a Notre Dame game, and I had a good.
Oh, that one where when the bush push and then back and forth.
Push. Yeah, I remember I was pacing so much on that game. That's my nervous twitch is to pace, and my roommates would be like, "Dude, chill out. It's gonna be all right."
So I have a story about that. That everyone remembers that game. And that game, Maya, is legendary. Like you can go watch it on YouTube, the Bush Push. I want to say it's 05-06. It's 05-06 USC Notre Dame. I can't remember. It's at Notre Dame.
I think it was 05. I think it was 05. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's nicknamed the Bush Push. And it was like such a tightrope game, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's like, who's going to win? And it's like crazy. And the stands are going up. And it was as if we had lost the game and won the game 6 times in the last 2 minutes of the game. Cause it was like, that's it, game over. And it's like, what just happened? Like, that's it, game over. And then what just happened? So that's happening. At the time, I'm actually in Texas and I am in Dallas, and we finished a recruiting event in Dallas where we like ran to the bar afterwards to, like, that was the only place it was showing, like made them change the channel, and we started watching the game. And we're like, we have to get to our flight. And so we have to drive from downtown Dallas to DFW. And we're in the car and we're like, find the radio station, which is already hard enough. We don't know where it's playing in Dallas, because why would USC Notre Dame be in Dallas of all places? And we're playing this, and we're like, it's the rudimentary 05. Like, can we get updates on our phone? Like, I don't know whether we can or not. Smartphones don't exist at this point. And so we're trying to find the radio station, and that back and forth keeps happening. At the same time, we keep losing the radio signal, and the station keeps turning to like a ranchera station. And all of a sudden we're like, what's happening? And we're like, what the hell is this? What's that? I don't know. So then we went through like radio silence for 10 minutes. We don't know whether we won or lost. Half of us are depressed in the car. Half of us are like confused, and we don't know what's happening. We get to the plane and we like try to get an update somewhere on the TV. And we find out that this whole crazy thing happens of this push that we kind of heard, but then you don't know whether it was actually a touchdown or whether it was like a foul or whether the time ran out. And then you go back, and with that later that night, it was on ESPN, like the entire night. And I stayed up all night watching these replays of like whether we won or lost. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy story.
That season was so, you had to, I think 05 was when you had the Bush Push, but that was the year that we played UT Austin in the championship game. And all of my high school friends went to UT Austin. Yeah. All my friends went to UT Austin. And so
the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I was in Texas for the holiday break, and I saw it with all my friends, right? And I was like the bad guy there, right, wearing all my USC gear. So I never got any grief for that whole week I was in town after the game when we lost. Oh my God, all my friends were just clowning on me. They were just
that was rough,
sending me messages. But it was probably, in my opinion, the best national championship game, and it truly had the number 1 versus the number 2.
It was.
But well, it is what it is.
It was fun. So while at USC, you talked about things that you did. When you look back on it, what was like the quintessential thing that you remember? Like, where were all of your friends from?
Yeah, it's good. I think most of my friends actually, you'd be surprised. A lot of my friends weren't in the engineering school. I ended up meeting a lot of people outside of the engineering school due to a relationship that I was in, and she had built bonds with a lot of friends from her dorms, and that close group of friends ended up becoming my friends, right? So we were together for several years, and I interacted with a lot of them, and some of them were in the business school, some of them were in actually, there's a really good friend of mine that was doing more literature, kind of a weird major that, well, not weird, but
it's not a weird.
Different. Yeah, it's
this book reading thing. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, you know what I'm saying. But yeah, so I had a diverse group of friends that came from all different areas. A lot of people were actually from California. It seemed that a lot of people tend to come down from the Bay Area, so I ended up having a lot of friends from the Bay Area. After I ended up leaving, which is really odd, I when I came up to the Bay Area for graduate school, a lot of them came back, and I built a group of friends in the Bay Area that were both from my roommates, but also individuals in my school. And all of my USC friends started interacting with all of my Berkeley friends. And it got to this point where a lot of my friends started hanging out without me. And it was just this weird thing where I was like, you're hanging out with him? That's really weird. And I ended up also the individual who I had a relationship with in college, her roommate ended up marrying one of my grad school coworkers or grad school companions because they met at a party where they came, and now they're married and have kids. So it's like this weird mixture of all of my different phases of college.
That's how it happens usually. That's usually how it happens. You mentioned you went on an overseas program. Did you go to the Rome program? Is that where you went?
I did, and it was amazing.
Who was in that cohort? Who would I remember? It was like I don't remember
from
the year.
Individuals.
Yeah.
Geez,
if you remember,
you're putting me on the spot now.
If you don't worry about it.
I don't remember a lot of their names, but I do remember some folks. I do remember the professors, but. Dean Yates was there, and Professor Shiflett. But yeah, so it was an amazing program from the standpoint that you had the opportunity to still take classes, right? So you could get a little bit ahead, but you're able to explore Italy. And so to me, the thing that I enjoyed the most is that you were immersed. And so you were able to, like, the location where we were living in, it was actually right across from the entrance to the Vatican Museum.
You're at the Candia residences, right?
It was prime spot, and it was amazing to see everybody line up in the mornings. And then it was about a 30-minute walk to where we would take the classes. You would go down this long avenue through these windy streets, and it just felt great to be able to be immersed in a completely different culture and the way that they view life. But also, the one thing that I thought was interesting is that I took 2 courses there. One was thermodynamics, and the other one was it was an English class. And the project, they try to incorporate the Italian vibe, and so we had to do some aspect where we had to design an aqueduct system or something. I forgot exactly what we did, but the fact that they were trying to bring in the cultural aspect of it, I thought was very unique and different. And then the weekend excursions were just awesome, right? So you were able to explore outside of Rome, and we were able to see do some other activities. And so I felt that letting go of my 68 Camaro was tough, but it was well worth it.
You had that great experience.
Oh, it was amazing. I take back a lot of the memories from that visit. I've been back to Italy several times since then for work and some other holidays, but it was never the same as when you were there the first time, right? So my wife and I went there we stopped in Rome during our honeymoon, and I was like, that's where I used to live. I was trying to find it. We walked around, I was like, I think that's my window that I used to have. I don't remember.
I can tell you where it is. I know exactly where it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Those we did that program for a while. We've changed it up a little bit now, but we've had students live in a number of different areas. But the Candia residences that were there, it's exactly like around the corners.
It's around the corner. There was a big staircase that led up to the wall, the Vatican wall, and it was around that area. There's apartments. Yeah.
Yeah. And we stopped doing it there because they were also housing like the new recruits for the Swiss Guard.
Okay.
And they got a little rowdy. It's like a 25-year-old Swiss military on their days off. We were like, maybe we shouldn't have the students there anymore.
That's funny. That's funny.
Move them somewhere else. That's awesome. Now you go on to Berkeley, and maybe this is out of order. Apologize, but you get married and you had kids now. What's?
So I do. I have an 11-month-old.
11 months.
He's about to turn a year on the 2nd. Well, actually, like in a week and a half.
Congrats.
Thanks.
September 2nd?
Yep, September 2nd. And my wife and I are expecting our second.
Oh my gosh.
They're going to be 13 months apart. Thank you. The second was not planned. But,
Irish twins.
Yeah, but it is what it is.
Aren't you an Irish twin?
I'm actually a real twin.
You're a real twin.
Oh, you are?
I am. Yeah. We were planned, but we always joke my sister wasn't.
Yeah.
My mom's like, oh, we have 2-year-olds. Why do we want another one right now?
Oh, well, life is going to get a little hectic in a month and a half. And so it's going to be a little interesting, but we're excited. It's a boy and a girl, so it'll be pretty good. My son is the first. Yeah.
That's so much fun.
I didn't get married until we've been married. We got married in 2018. So It's been 3 years. It's been exciting. I met my wife after college. I met her through CrossFit. I got really into CrossFit.
Yeah,
I've been doing it. Yeah. I've been doing it since 2011. So it's been almost 11 years. Wow. And it became a religion, to be honest with you, for the first 3 or 4 years. I don't know if anybody ever talks about CrossFit. They always talk about CrossFit.
I heard about it. Not in the podcast, but just in general. I have lots of conversation. I'm curious how many box jumps you did during the wedding.
Oh no, we didn't do so. We didn't do it that much. We didn't try to incorporate it because it's honestly it is a big part of our lives. We met there, and my wife used to actually compete, and so she was really into it. And wow. And so but I feel bad for my poor wife. For the last 3 years, she's either been pregnant or trying to get pregnant. And so she's like kind of over it. She wants to go back to her original lifestyle of training 6 days a week. And yeah. But yeah, so if I backtrack the timeline, when I finished and graduated from USC, I had always in my mind when I was younger, even before high school, I always felt, because of the environment of my parents being doctors, that you had to do a PhD or get a doctorate. That was just embedded in my head, subconsciously, to be honest, because my parents never really pushed it. Right. And so I always had it in my mind that I was always going to get a PhD. And so when I got to USC and I started, doing the extracurricular activities, and then I started undergraduate research my junior year, I got really excited about research, and I started looking at different locations. And when I got the opportunity to work on a project in Berkeley, I took that chance. I did a summer internship at the National Lab in Berkeley, that's above the campus.
Yeah,
in nuclear energy. We were focusing on developing. So nuclear energy, there's 2 ways to create energy from nuclear. There's fusion and fission. And so fission is the most common form of doing it, and fusion is the cleaner, easier way. But there's a running joke that fusion will always be here in 20 years because it's a very difficult challenge. So the project I worked on was trying to create a technique to accelerate fusion. So fusion, the way it works is you have a target essentially that has different isotopes of hydrogen, and you want to heat it up with a source, either a laser or an ion. And when you get to a point where you fuse it together, there's a thermal event, and that temperature that comes out of it is then used to create steam, and then the steam turns an engine, and that's how you create electricity. And so I was working on the design for this target so that you could view it from different angles and be able to get measurements of what was occurring in that reaction. And so I really got enamored with Berkeley at that time period, just because the national campus above it gives you so much opportunity for energy, and there's all the different type of energy research up there. And so when I joined Berkeley, the first project I did was randomly not in energy. It was actually a project that was sponsored by Apple through Intel, and it was in optical computing. So what I was working on, if you guys have Apples or Macs Thunderbolt, that input-output, I was working on the 2nd generation of Thunderbolt, where it was intended to be purely communicating through light instead of communicating through electricity. And so I was working on a chip where you could bring the light in through your USB port effectively, and you could encode information in light by different wavelengths so that you could do 5 or 6 times more information at the same speed. And it was my first experience in understanding how corporate America works, because it was an Intel project being sponsored by Apple, but Intel was doing all the development primarily because this was a way for them to be able to create a need for better processors in the future, because if you have faster information, you need a better processor. And so they invested themselves to basically enable more, I guess, products for them to be able to sell in the future.
Yeah.
So it was a unique project, and I worked on it for about 2 years, but I had to travel an hour and a half from the campus every day.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so it was really rough. So I after a year and a half, I ended up deciding to stop that project and just get a master's from it. And I ended up closing out the project, getting a master's from it, and I started thinking about what I wanted to do for the rest of the time I was at Berkeley. And I had the opportunity to work on a really interesting technology where you effectively are creating a coating on glass that allows you to tint on demand. So it's effectively kind of like a transparent battery that when you would drive electricity into the material, the material would change color and get darker. And this technique, it utilized a material that was made from a liquid or like an ink, and it was really inexpensive to produce. So the professor had a concept on this idea, and I had done a little bit of research in nanocrystal synthesis when I was at USC for solar cells. And so I jumped on it and took the project on and worked on it for 3 years. But within a year of into the project, I felt that this could be a compelling business. And I started really focusing my efforts on trying to commercialize this technology. And so I spent 2 years from a concept to a benchtop proof of concept from a material standpoint. And then I just started pitching the business. And my last year of graduate school, I had raised money from grants, from government grants, and I ended up raising the first round of money and started my first company. And so it was a wild ride. And I had that company for 10 years, and unfortunately, I had to close its doors last November because our funding finally fell through. Yeah, it was very unfortunate. It was a crazy journey because think of starting a cool technology from an idea and then building it all the way through where we had a pilot manufacturing facility and we scaled to large windows. We were making windows that were like for residential applications, about a meter by a meter. And
This is heliotrope, right?
Correct. It was heliotrope. And we were about to open a large volume manufacturing plant in Spain, where we were going to produce windows that were 3 meters by 2 meters wide, which is roughly like what you would see in a large commercial skyscraper. And we actually had a lead investor, and they backed out on signing day after a year and a half of trying to get this deal done. And so we only had about 3 weeks worth of capital left, and we weren't able to get other investors back to the table, and the journey ended. So it was a very sad journey because it went from popping champagne bottles to finally, be able to launch a manufacturing plant that you could do at volume, to letting the whole staff go and then focusing on selling all of the assets from the facility that we had and all of the intellectual property that we had accumulated. But it was an experience like no other. When you go through that journey of trying to establish something, especially in your 20s, you learn a lot. And I was able to take that experience. And most recently, I got the opportunity to take a leadership role in a battery startup company. And so that's what I've been working on for the last 6 months. And so it's been really exciting to go into a different industry, but starting a business with experiences of what worked in the past and what didn't work in the past and what you don't want to repeat when you start a new venture.
Is that which, because your LinkedIn resume is filled with companies you're starting here. So which one is this? Is this Samsar?
Yeah, so Samsar is the battery company.
Got it.
Throughout the whole journey from Heliotrope, which is
Yeah.
the glass company I started, I always had a side venture. So one of the things that I learned from when I was in high school is getting multiple sources of revenue is always, or capital is good. So I always had a side business. When I was at Heliotrope, one of my side businesses was buying and selling lab equipment. So as I started,
you're always flipping.
Always flipping. So I extended my flipping of cars to flipping of lab equipment because now I understood the value of it. So I would go to auctions from businesses that would go under, and you could buy really expensive lab equipment for pennies on the dollar, and then you would sell it on eBay, or I would go through my network and sell it to incubate companies that are incubating and through a bunch of different incubation locations in the Bay Area. And so that 4H's company, it manifests itself from doing that, as well as focusing on helping younger entrepreneurs pay it forward and help them with any type of challenges they may have on establishing a new business. So going through that journey once, it's taught me a lot that I would like to pay it forward and pass it on. And so I started helping a lot of my friends that were just starting their businesses and had raised capital and were building out their teams, or were focusing on trying to create partnerships with entities that are a lot larger than them. And how do you navigate those discussions in a way where you feel that the partnership is balanced and not against them just because they're the smaller fish. And so I'm still doing that to this day. So even in this leadership role with Samsar, I have a variety of different side contracts where I just help folks out. And on top of that, I also ended up joining the board of directors for another smart window company. So I didn't feel like the journey for Heliotrope was completely lost in terms of the company ending. I was approached right after the company died by a lot of the smart window companies, just because I had been in the industry for over 11 years and had learned a lot. And so I
created a reputation, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was more of a network, to be honest. Okay. Like, it's a small industry, and there's a huge demand for this product. The challenge is that it's in a very old market and industry where, glass has been around for centuries, and a lot of these large glass companies, it's like my grandfather's grandfather started it, and I'm just, I'm taking it over. And so innovation in this industry is really slow, but the requirement or the need, the demand for this type of product is high. And so navigating that challenge of trying to produce a product that can be at a cost where the end user doesn't feel like they're paying an arm and a leg to get it installed has been the biggest challenge in getting this to work. And so this new company that I'm on the board on, they're kind of taking an extension of the approach that we were doing in my previous venture at Heliotrope. And I felt that, through my experience, I could help guide them and help them through connections. And so I've been really kind of sitting there on their advisory board from a board director standpoint, just reviewing their technical progress and, getting them connections from a commercial front, from all the partners that we had accumulated throughout my time at Heliotrope. And so it's been really fun to still extend the knowledge that we were able to gather through those 10 years, so that hopefully this product can eventually be the industry standard. I'm more excited for seeing these products in every building than getting some monetary exit from the actual business. I don't want the intellectual property to just, be shelved, and all the hard work that the team spent for the last 10 years. I wanted to see it, go to fruition at some point.
Yeah, it's fascinating to talk about this idea of like innovating a vertical space that is so entrenched in history. Like, a commodity, steel, glass, like we have a new steel. Oh, sure you do. Like we have a new glass, like that's got to be
right now. Crazy. Yeah, right now the hottest topic is concrete. So there's a lot of investment in concrete because they're trying to create concrete in a fashion that is low energy intensive. And so there's been a lot of investment in these different companies. You'd be surprised if you start to look around on just Googling some of the low carbon concrete that's being produced.
Huh.
But yeah, these commodity markets, right? They're established, old, huge, because everywhere you look, there's glass. I didn't realize how much innovation is in glass until I got into the industry. And I think my wife and my friends, they get annoyed because everywhere I go, I start like pointing out all these things about glass that you would never think about, right? Like you would never look at it, you would never experience it. And it was fascinating to learn this the last 10 years and being able to, hopefully at some point our technology that we developed or I could help develop with these guys will be able to become the industry
cool.
better.
That's so cool, man. You know what? I know Maya probably has a question, but one thing that I wanted to get on is a thread I picked up from you is this idea of this broad interest in topics that are all related to technology in some level, but that you kind of felt like you self-identified as like ping-ponging between things. Like I really like chemistry, and then I got mechanical engineering, but then I really want to go into energy, and you're like, oh, maybe, and then I think you said maybe I picked the wrong one, but then I would say, but you went ahead and got your master's in mechanical engineering and your PhD in mechanical engineering, so it couldn't have been the wrong one. And I lay all that commentary out because every day, including yesterday, I'm talking to students that are trying to figure out what they want to major in, and they are worried they're going to pick the wrong one. And then they'll say, well, what's the best degree to get a job doing what you do? And I always tell them there's not an answer to that question. It's just kind of like what you like doing at the time. And there, your job and your company. And I would venture to guess that to create that technology, to have this smart on-demand tinting window system using nanotechnology involves chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. It involves all of them. And like people from those backgrounds all have to go into it. It's not like you got the one degree that solved the problem, right?
No, when you think of innovation and technology, it's always a diverse group of individuals that work together to be able to satisfy it. You're never going to be able to have just one degree and come out with a product. As a matter of fact, in my last venture, I was very big on getting a diverse set of backgrounds. And I think it really helps in both on the innovation front because everybody brings a different angle into the problem. And when you sit in a room and you describe it through every angle, you end up evaluating the whole system, and you end up coming up with pretty interesting solutions that they're innovative from a certain standpoint. So, my personal thought, right? I mentioned my junior year at USC, I was like, should I just, try to do chemical engineering? In my facet, I was like, my core classes that I took for mechanical engineering, they taught me a lot, but my research was more in chemical engineering and chemistry. Mm-hmm. And you could still do that. So when I went to graduate school, it was the same thing. I was in mechanical engineering. I was taking heat transfer classes. That was my core expertise. But my research was in silicon photonics, which is like optics, complete optics and solid state physics. And then my second half of my journey at Berkeley was all electrochemistry, chemistry, nanocrystal science. As long as you have that intellectual curiosity, your core subjects will always give you a different angle. So like when I went into my PhD program, when I was doing the PhD project on the smart window, all of my mechie, I set up all of my test structures. I CAD'd everything. I designed the whole setup. I utilized all of my core work that I had, established from when I was at USC and through my coursework. But my fundamental research was more chemistry and electrochemistry. And so you had to use those different experiences in order to be able to get a group. And I worked with a chemist. So the chemist would make the materials for me. And I started learning from her how to produce nanocrystals. And I could say I've made nanocrystals myself, which is, a mechanical engineer in a chemistry hood, working with chemicals is kind of weird. But as long as you have that intellectual curiosity, when you get into the field or you go into your career, you're going to have opportunities out there. I always look at your core classes as just building that foundation of work that you're going to build off of. Once you get into a field, you obviously end up getting more narrow and you start learning more about the specific area. But that foundation is what's going to really hold everything up. You know, your logical train of thinking. If as long as you have logic, you'll be able to I guess be successful in your career, in my opinion. Yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I
mean,
love.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mara.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, even when I was in Berkeley, I took a bunch of MBA classes and I got certificates in MBA stuff. And I did it primarily because I knew that I was going to start a venture. And it was interesting to go to those classes because the dynamic was very different from engineering classes.
Yeah.
And the way they approached problems was very different. Neither is right or wrong. It's just different, right? And so it was great to be in those classes because when you would have a project together with students that were in the MBA program, you could see how people approach the problem, right? And the collective group at the end ends up finding the right solution. But anyways, it was a very interesting experience.
I was going to say before, I'd love to go back and dive in a little bit to the lessons that you've learned from your venture. So I've dabbled in some entrepreneurial podcasts. I'd say it's something I'm interested in. And I think a lot of other prospective students, a lot of students in general now, it's about like building new things, pushing the envelope, and really cool to hear about. Like in all the information that I've absorbed from other people and from you, it's like failing in that space is really common. It's almost expected to fail with your venture, particularly your first one. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that. I guess your like the quote unquote failure, your expectations, and what you learned from that.
Yeah, it's to me, when I look at entrepreneurship, it's one of those facets that going into it that there's a high probability of not succeeding, even though that's always going to be your goal and you always want to move forward. And so the two things that I would take away from entrepreneurship: it's okay to not know all the answers. I think that's one aspect that comes out even in this new venture that I'm doing right now. It's a different field, a different market. I don't know all the answers, but I'll figure them out. And so as long as you're open-ended and willing to adopt and change as you start to learn more, that really helps the venture out a lot. The more flexibility that you have, having the experience of working in a more established, larger company that's already been set in stone, like Intel, versus working in a small startup, there's differences and benefits and positives on both sides. Structure is one thing that a startup strives to have at the end, but it's hard to do it sometimes when you don't necessarily know if your venture is going to work out. And so there's this weird balance of how much structure do you put in, or is that structure holding you back from being flexible enough to adapt to all the different spaces that you could go into? I think for me, on the failure part, I could point to, like, I would say 3 times where I felt like I failed and I had a lesson learned. Some are in the entrepreneurial part, but actually the first one was at USC. I remember when I came in and I transferred my first year, I was taking a class in statics by a professor called Professor Safadi. I don't know if he's still there at the Mechie department, but I was approaching it like I would approach anything when I was in high school. I was like, I went to a concert the night before and I just kind of studied a little bit before the test. Well, I bombed the test, and he had a interesting way of handing out the test results. He handed it out by order of best to worst.
Oh no!
Yeah,
brutal.
So everybody knew who was going to do bad if you're being called, and I remember he was handing them all out, and I was like, oh my god, I bombed it, and it was like the first reality check of, okay, this is a different environment. I have to adapt a little bit more and pay a little bit more attention and put a little bit more effort. So that like really motivated me to spend a little bit more time on being prepared, especially for all the different classes.
To clarify, I don't think that's actually legal anymore. Just
really?
a heads up. I don't think you can do that.
Well,
probably couldn't do it at the time either. Just a heads up.
He didn't announce it. It was just that's the way he would organize it, and so you knew that that's the way. Like he didn't like announce what you got, but when he would grade it and then stack it, he would always stack it by the grades, and so you would know when he would hand it out that the top was the top and the bottom was the bottom.
Oh no.
So he didn't like say your grade out loud. He would just hand it out, but we already knew,
what kind of person goes through a stack of things and then reorders it based on scoring? Like that seems like the weirdest.
I don't know. That's the only teacher at USC who did that. But anyways, my second thing is, so when you get into a PhD program, you get accepted into the program, but you still have to take examinations to actually get into the program. And what they do at Berkeley is you have to take the final exams for all their undergraduate work. And the challenge there is the curriculum there is slightly different from what was taught at USC. So there's certain things that weren't taught at USC. You have to teach yourself. And that during that time period is when I was doing my project at Intel. So I was spending so much time at Intel that I didn't have as much time to study. So I failed the first exam and then I failed again the second time. And I had to actually amend to take it a third time. And that preservation or like pushing forward is where you could take those lessons into your entrepreneurial aspect, right? You're going to fail. And so the question is, what do you do after you fail? And I think when you persevere, like when you have perseverance, like the thing is you say, okay, I failed. What did I do wrong? What should I do next? And let's just keep moving forward. So that drive to keep moving forward is what I think most entrepreneurs have either within them naturally or they learn it, but it's one of those things that you have that positive mindset. I don't know if that's the best way of phrasing it. Like for me, when I view everything,
it's a growth mindset.
That growth mindset, like the growth mindset is in my DNA. Like I never think negatively about anything. I'm like, all right, we'll just figure out another solution. And I don't know if it's just, if it was subconsciously taught to me by my parents when I was little or something, I don't know. But that growth mindset, that growth mindset is, I think, one of the most compelling characteristics that can help you move. And in the end, when you look at failure, what is failure, right? Like I didn't monetarily succeed. Like we didn't have a business that was creating all this revenue, but I learned what it takes to build a business. I met a lot of amazing people. They were in our organization. We made a lot of cool technical innovations that I hope at some point are going to be, coming out. And so to me, that's where I look at it, not as a failure, but an end to a journey and a lesson learned for the next journey. I think that's the better way of thinking about it. I know right now in this new venture that I'm doing, a lot of these lessons learned have really helped me to prepare for this next journey that we're going on and try to build the same kind of fashion that we're doing. And so I don't know, that's just my point of view, but I'm pretty sure that if you talk to other entrepreneurs, they would think about the same growth mindset and journey kind of aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You could see the growth mindset through your answer too, how you framed everything in that positive light. I love that.
Yeah. Memo, we don't want to keep you for too much long. You've been so generous with your time. I just have one last thing, unless Maya has something else you wanted to share about.
Yeah. Go for it, Paul.
So I rarely remember, but I'm going to try to do better this year. And Maya, you're going to keep me on top of this, is that whenever we get someone like you in, we always want to end with a very fun lightning round set of questions. Are you down?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. So let's start the timer. Here we go, really fast. Tapas or pasta?
Tapas.
Ask permission or beg forgiveness?
Beg forgiveness.
If the toilet paper roll is really low but not completely out, do you replace it or leave it for someone else?
I just leave it for someone else.
Yeah. How many redheads are you friends with?
2.
Wow. What's the type of triangle? Well, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say wow. What's the type of triangle with 2 equal sides called again?
I forgot. I don't know.
All right.
Equilateral.
Isosceles.
Isosceles. Okay.
We're calling Berkeley about your PhD. What's your favorite carnival food?
I would say corn dogs.
Yeah. Name a word that starts with the letter Q.
Queen, quina? I don't know.
Are you trying to say quinoa?
I was going to say queef, but I think that was like not appropriate. So.
We're moving on. Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
Oh, climb a mountain.
If you were really hungry, would you eat a bug?
Yeah.
Did you go to sleepaway summer camp as a kid?
Sometimes.
So yes.
Yes.
Dude, yes or no?
Yes.
Like...
Yes. Yeah. Well, I didn't do it every summer. That's why.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
How long can you hold your breath for?
Ooh, a minute.
Wow. Okay. Have you ever seen a kangaroo in person?
Yes.
And when people stand up for a standing ovation, are you usually one of the earlier people to stand up or one of the latter?
Latter.
All right. Well, that was our lightning round question. A new set of questions I've never asked before and highly entertaining, to say the least. Right. The last thing I want to end with, man, is, the one thing that I remember about you that really came through even in this conversation was whenever you walked into like my door or whenever we saw you at an event or when you were working or anything else, it was like bright-eyed, big smile and like, I'm here to work. Like, I'm here to do stuff. What do you need me to do? Yeah. And that was exactly what this was. And that was exactly how you described that growth mindset of like, I'm here to engage. That's exactly how you described finding community and success as a transfer student. It was this idea that failure is not a thing. It's just this idea of like, I'm just here to do stuff and we're going to learn from it regardless. And that growth mindset, yeah, it was embedded into your parents in the way that they had the structure of their family and their professional lives and on the border and going back across the border and that implied, doctorate degree is that's just where we go. That's just what we do. Yeah. And it's not like there's no pressure on you to do it. It's just, that's just what we do. And you can do it too. And so I am so appreciative of you sharing your thoughts and your story with all of our listeners. It was really, really great to connect with you. I am very, very excited for you to be bringing on a second one into that, especially as the first one I think you're going to have this idea of a second kid and the one walking at the same time, which is a whole. Have they started walking yet? The oldest.
So Ramsey, he's like, I would say 2 weeks away from walking. Like he stands up everywhere and he's starting to like balance by himself and then he falls back down. But it's going to be wild.
It's a whole new world, man. It's a whole new world when they start when they leave the houseplant stage and they're just like, wait, they can do stuff now. Wait, what's happening?
I know he's a good, he crawls so fast right now, which is kind of crazy. But when he's walking, he's a beast. He's hilarious though. Awesome.
Well, I'm excited for you.
I really appreciate the invitation. It was a great conversation. Maya, it was a pleasure meeting you. And Paul, next time you guys are up in town, let me know and I could try to, set up a time to help out.
2 weeks.
Okay. Well, maybe not in 2 weeks because I'll be out of town, but next time after that.
I'll be there September 6th.
Memo, you'll have to come watch some football games this year.
I know, I haven't been back to USC in probably 7 years. It's very different, by the way. The last time I went through there, it was like, wow. Like the old Tradies that I used to go to, which was like a little tiny room. No, it's like now there's like nightclub down there. I walk down there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, man, I'll be there. No, for real. I'll be there September 10th Saturday, September 10th and Sunday, September 11th.
I'm going to be out of town those days, but next time. All
next time.
Awesome, guys.
Hey, see you, Memo.
Have a good one. You too. Bye. Bye.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did.
Cool guy, right?
Yeah. Just absolutely the coolest. Loved everything that he had to say. I was super engaged in that conversation, and I'm really guessing that everyone who listens to it also will be. Yeah,
it was. I don't know if I'm out of practice because it's been a while since we've done one of these, but I mentioned to you briefly before we started recording. He was so good at this conversation that it was challenging for me because I feel like he was answering questions before I had a chance to ask him. And so I didn't know where I was in my questions. So it's like he just kind of kept offering up cool stuff about his experiences and challenges and how he moved on from different things and his transfer stuff. And I was like, oh my God, we got to go back and forth on this stuff. He knows his story really well, and he knows what people would want to know, especially if you're a high school or transfer student, on how he kind of navigated those challenges. And the thing I want to reiterate is what I said to him, just at the end there, which is that that's always him, this really bright-eyed, always a big smile, always willing to just be engaged and to try stuff. And it's the thing that I tell students all the time. And my advice for them is I basically describe Memo, be Memo. Yeah, this guy who's always willing to try something and do something and put his effort in. And that's usually what leads you to be as successful as he is right here. So I'm glad you got to meet him, Maya, especially because of your interest in entrepreneurial efforts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That stuff that he had to say about the growth mindset and how we should frame what happens and not view things as failures. I think that's really important advice for everyone, and myself in particular. I know that particularly into high school, I was so averse to failure, and college has been a learning experience for me. I've had a lot of practice with that, and it's been really uncomfortable. So to hear Memo's advice, some of his experiences, his stories, particularly with the teacher, it's been really encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, that was a really, really fun thing and a really great kickoff to our first kind of real episode for season 8. We've got a few others lined up in the next couple of weeks. So I hope you'll join us again when we launch a few other episodes in the coming week. We should have a new episode up pretty much every single Sunday. We might have a few bonus episodes. And if you ever need anything from us, you can always feel free to email my admission staff account. That's vadmit@usc.edu. Or you can, if you have any questions about admission or things that are happening in your life as a student that's going through the application process, or a parent, you can always feel free to call us at 213-600-9919. And we have a whole slate of events going on that I may have mentioned in the past, but you can go to viterbiadmission.usc.edu/events, and you can check out events that are happening around the country and around the world, specifically related to admission. We have in-person events and on-campus events that you can come visit at. We have virtual events you can join in if you're not able to travel. Maya, you and your friends have live chats that are scheduled. Those are all on the page. So check out viterbiadmission.usc.edu/events. There's so much stuff happening. We have so many other episodes coming down the road, and we're always here to help you if you need more about the school. So thank you so much, Maya. Thank you again for being here, and we'll see you all, or not, we won't see you all. You'll hear us in the near future. Bye.